So thanks for joining us talking turkey today at our Wild Webcast. We have our turkey biologist, Nick Oakley, who's with us, and our Turkey Habitat Initiative Coordinator, Megan Duffy Yates. They'll be sharing information on some recent proposed changes to turkey hunting regulations, turkey production, harvest trends, some research findings, how we can combat habitat loss, and what we could do for improving habitat. So let's jump back in. And again, folks, we'll post this if you aren't able to watch it now. So Nick, we're talking turkey. We're going to talk some regulations and why we're doing the changes. We're going to go over spring production, fall harvest, and then Megan will join us on the Turkey Habitat Initiative. So the big news is we have a new regulation for spring turkey season starting this season. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess the big top headline here is that private land hunters are going to be able to chase turkeys until sunset this year. Historically, we've had a half hour before sunrise to 1 p.m. season, and now we have on private land in particular, half hour before sunrise to sunset, which is great for those of us who can't get out and hunt in the morning. Public land hunters are still going to be closing. The shooting hours are still going to close for public land hunters at 1 p.m. though.
Okay, but again, public land 1 p.m.
That's right.
Private land
Sunset.
all day, sunset.
Yep.
Okay, and then we'll get into more of kind of why we've done this. Yeah. Additionally, we're proposing some changes to regulations for fall turkey hunting, and tell us more about what's going on with that.
Yeah, so first off, this is still in kind of the public comment phase, so nothing has been formalized yet. But essentially, what we're going to do is instead of having 2 turkey permits and 2 portions, we're going to have 1 turkey permit with 2 portions. So hunters who want to hunt turkeys during the fall, be that by shotgun or archery, will need to get a fall turkey permit. Also associated with that is a reduction in bag limit from 4 birds, which is what it was historically, to 2 birds, which it would be moving forward if this were to pass.
Okay, just to try to make it very clear.
Yeah.
So as of now, if you are hunting turkey with firearms during the firearm season, you need a dedicated turkey permit, right?
Yeah, fall firearms turkey
permit.
Yep.
But if you are an archery hunter and you are out there, you will be hunting turkeys, but you'll probably also be hunting deer maybe, which the permit for that then is
like the fall archery permit. It includes 2 turkey tags in addition to your 2
right.
deer tags. Yep.
So again, the big change is a dedicated turkey permit for both firearms and archery, 2 bag limit.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we're proposing some regulations for fall, and again, we are open for public comment. So we base our decisions on both sound science and public input. So if folks want to comment on this, they can comment at our website. And if you want to look, if you don't have it directly, you can just go to mdc.mo.gov and search public commenting opportunities, and you'll see fall turkey regulations when we come up to that. So why are we making some of these changes? We're reacting to turkey numbers, hunter numbers, a number of factors.
Yeah, it's a good question. So this was a figure put together by our R3 coordinator. So what this person does is they track recruitment, retention, and reactivation in our hunting public. And so this figure shows resident turkey hunter, participation and recruitment between 2017 and 2023. And what you can see on this figure is that we've seen some fairly significant declines in all these metrics, right? Our participation is down 13%, retention and recruitment are down about 15% each. So that's fairly concerning, right? We all agree that hunters are conservationists. And so whenever we see something like this, we start to get some concern about kind of diluting that user group or that advocacy base. There was a really cool study that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology put out a few years back, where they showed that bird species across the country were in pretty major decline. And one of the leading reasons of this is that we've lost a lot of habitat. However, one of the kind of core groups that they looked at were birds that depend on wetlands. And this group of bird species has actually increased
Oh,
since the
uh-huh.
1970s. And one of the reasons the authors proposed for this being the case is that hunters essentially are just they're prioritizing habitat management for ducks, and as a result, a lot of other wetland species benefit. So
Okay. So there's a lot of public initiative
yeah,
to conserve wetlands. And you said a lot of that is through groups like Ducks Unlimited
right.
and waterfowl hunters and things like that. Um, so that's the good news, but we've lost other habitat. And I know
Yeah.
Megan will talk to us later as far as how we can help get that back.
Yeah. But one of the things I think is really cool about this figure as well, or really helpful, is that it shows, kind of some good news, right? If you see on that figure, there's spikes in each one of those lines, and that's for year 2020. We all remember 2020 as a pandemic year. Hunting participation across the country spiked. People had more chances to get out in the woods, right? Schools were closed. People were out of work. It's not something that we aspired to get back to.
Right.
So
I mean, it was a terrible thing, but some good news out of that
Yeah.
was that we saw more hunters
That's right.
able to get out
Yeah.
and hunt.
As you remove that barrier to participation, people take advantage of it.
Right. And this ties back to the time issue.
That's
of
right.
People's time, and time is one of those commodities you can't get back.
That's right.
So by opening it up all day on private land, that will give turkey hunters more time.
Yeah. So really, this kind of figure kind of prompted us to dig into whether or not providing more opportunity would be both sustainable for the turkey population, but also whether or not Missourians would even be supportive of it. And so that's kind of how we started down this road.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned R3 earlier, let's just help clarify that. That is a national, really conservation effort that involves the 3 R's, the R3, hence the name: recruitment, retention, and reactivation. So that means we're looking nationally, the Department of Conservation and everywhere, to recruit more hunters,
Yep.
to retain the hunters that we have, and also then to reactivate some folks who hunted at some point but kind of fell off.
That's right.
So, and this kind of shows that we're doing that.
Yeah. Well, and that figure was specifically for Missouri hunters. So
Right.
while it is a national problem, it certainly is a case
It's here in Missouri, and we're trying to get more turkey hunters out there. This is one way we're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're not alone in this. Have other states made this change, and what have those results been?
Yeah, so one of my first steps whenever I saw that R3 figure was to just kind of zoom out for a second and see, have other states considered, going to an all-day season as a way to increase opportunity within sort of the kind of the framework that already exists. And a couple immediately came to mind, right? So Indiana was a state that did it probably in the early 2000s, and they actually their turkey biologist published a paper which was really useful. But then also Ohio and Virginia had done it as well in the last decade or so. So using some of the information that I gleaned, I also discussed this with the turkey biologists in those states. We saw, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you don't work in a vacuum.
No.
You look at a ton of data, research, information, all that. You also talk to your colleagues
That's right.
all around the country to really, as you're about to tell us, to get a better sense of things. Just giving folks an idea of kind of who you work with and how.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's a really nice community of turkey biologists that we all meet as a function of some of our regional kind of commitments. So we in Missouri are part of MAFWA and CIAFWA, the Midwest and Southeast Fish and Game agencies,
Right.
essentially, and then we all are also part of the National Technical Committee with the National Wild Turkey Federation.
All right.
So we meet a lot and talk about these sort of things, and this was certainly something that I leaned on some of those other state biologists for.
So again, those highlights.
Yeah.
Increase in youth participation.
Yeah, so Indiana noted in the paper that they published that they did see an increase in participation.
Great news.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of the goal. So that's good to see, certainly.
Thinking kids then maybe don't have to take a day off from school. Right. They can go after school.
That's right.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And then Virginia, they didn't see a decline in hunter satisfaction, so that was kind of neutral.
Yeah, they looked at, right, so one of the concerns I've heard from a lot of turkey hunters is this is going to impact the behavior of turkeys, right? They're going to gobble less, things like that. And one of the main metrics that we track when we think about hunter satisfaction is the amount of gobbling. So whenever I saw that Virginia didn't see a decline in overall hunter satisfaction, that kind of reassured me that our hunters weren't going to see, or we're going to have just as good a time in the field as they had previously. So that was reassuring. But ultimately, and I think this was pretty interesting. This was pretty interesting to me, is that between 80 and 90% of the harvest was still in the morning. Your hardcore turkey hunters are morning people. I certainly love watching the woods come alive whenever I'm out turkey hunting. It's part of the experience for me. So it was interesting to see that was true for a lot of other people as well.
Well, and that's kind of like conditioning.
Yeah,
If you're
exactly.
used to getting up before dawn and being out in the woods before dawn,
That's right.
I mean, it's still going to work, but this is about opportunity
Yep.
for other people to have opportunity. And it really hasn't kind of hurt the harvest. Like, we're seeing a 10% increase in harvest rates in these states.
Yeah, so not even harvest rates. So about a 10% increase in harvest, right? Harvest rate's a slightly different thing, which I'll touch on. And it's interesting. It's hard to pinpoint the effect of a regulation change on harvest. And I'll use some Missouri data just as an example. So in 2020, that COVID year, right, we saw about a 7% increase in harvest, right? So all that extra participation increased our harvest about 7%. However, last year, right, no regulation changes, nothing out of the ordinary as far as weather or anything like that. We saw a 23% increase in harvest, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we talk about an increase in harvest, just know that there's a lot of factors that go into that. We do expect to see more turkeys harvested as a result of this, but the goal certainly is to increase opportunity, and harvest is just a side effect of that, essentially.
Right. So if we do see an uptick in the harvest, can our Missouri turkey numbers sustain that?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. But yes, I mean, so essentially the harvest rate that we've seen over the years has been pretty stable, and harvest rate is a measure of how many birds are being removed from the population compared to how many are there, right? So if we remove 1,000 out of 10,000 birds, right, then our harvest rate's 10%, right? So that's useful information, and that's information that we need to collect via research. And so we're really lucky that we had great research in the 80s, 90s, the 2010s, and then we're actually doing a harvest rate project right now. So we have a nice long data set that we've looked at, and harvest rates maintained a fairly stable trajectory, and it's pretty flat. Maybe it's ticked up a little bit in the last few years, but it's not at a point that I'm terribly concerned about. And one of the reasons why I think our harvest rate remains sustainable is it has to do with the season timing and the structure of our turkey season. So we time our season in the calendar year after the peak in breeding activity occurs, right? So we've got these gobblers on the landscape that have done their job, and then we're going to start to hunt them, right? So by removing birds at that point in the season, the impact on production should be fairly low, maybe non-existent.
Okay.
And then we also only allow hunters to harvest one bird that first week. So even if the season, the kind of the peak and breeding season shifts a little later, we still kind of do what we can to reduce the pressure during that first week. So that's really good. And I think it helps to insulate us from concerns about overharvest with turkeys.
Okay, good. And I know Megan will share with us more information where we see research that nesting success and poult survival are really some big drivers.
Yeah.
And she'll share with us how we can improve that.
Yeah, as we think about turkey population dynamics, it's very much a ground up growth model instead of a top down. So having more poults on the landscape is what's going to create more turkeys the following year, and that makes good sense intellectually. But removing gobblers during that time of year really doesn't impact the number of poults we're creating.
Right, negatively.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's some really solid research we have, and like you mentioned, we will have decades and decades of research on that. The other side of what we do is public opinion and public input. So share with us a bit as far as what folks thought about moving the season to all day for private land.
Yeah, so again, the point of this is we've seen declines in participation. So that's something we want to address. I certainly believe that the turkey population can withstand some more harvest. Otherwise, I would have never brought this forward as an opportunity. Right. That's not my point. Is not to hunt the turkeys so hard that we have fewer turkeys. But we did want to get a sense for how the public would kind of view a regulation change of this sort. So there was a couple of options for public input. One was a pretty big survey for turkey hunters. We surveyed 13,000 randomly selected turkey hunters, and that's what we're looking at here as far as the stats that are on the page. But we also had an opportunity for just public input. So anyone who had any interest could go to a web page and write down what they thought about the regulations. So for the survey, what we did is we broke out these 4 different kind of regulation options, right? So maintain the current structure, go to all day for the second 2 weeks of the season, go to all day for the entire turkey season, and then kind of an additional one here, which was to eliminate legal bearded hen harvest. We included that because many of our stakeholders are concerned with the number of hens that get harvested during our turkey seasons. So we wanted to give those folks a chance to kind of register that opinion and see where that all fell out. And so what we saw was a majority of our hunters supported maintaining the current structure, but also going to an all-day season, which is interesting. But whenever you break it down between casual and avid, you can see that more casual hunters were in support of it than avid hunters. And then certainly it was very popular with our younger hunters, which again is part of that recruitment class that we're interested in getting to. So that's part of the consideration that we took into account.
Okay, as I'm looking at these, and I'm not a statistician in all of this, I see maintain current regulatory structure at 55% supporting that. And then also all day hunting for the season at 52%. So are those mutually exclusive, or
No,
so hunters
correct.
are supporting the structure of the season, but also want all day hunting?
The way we asked the question was rank your level of support for this option independent of the other options. So people were in favor of maintaining, but also in favor of expanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, okay. Good to know. Anything else on kind of the statistics, and what else do we want folks to know?
Yeah, you'll note that we didn't really have a public-private split as one of the kind of components of this. That wasn't part of the survey or the public
Right.
comment. Really, the reason why we ended up going that direction was because of the comments we received. So a lot of folks were concerned about multi-use on public land. So during the spring, of course, we've got mushroom hunting. That's a popular thing
Sure.
to do in the woods in the spring, but it's a good time for bird watchers. It's nice. It's just a nice time
To be out in the woods.
to be in the woods.
To be outside in nature.
So that was one of the things that we took into took into account whenever we were thinking through the regulations. Also, we heard from our own staff. They like to do their work in the afternoons on our public land. They'd prefer not to interrupt turkey hunters. And so this was a way of kind of getting the work done on our own properties while still allowing for good hunting kind of environment.
Right. So trying to give the best options as much as we can.
Yep.
So again, hence private land, folks have that opportunity. If they want folks to hunt on their land, they can all day now.
Yep.
But as you mentioned, conservation areas, that time of year, bunch of different users.
Yeah.
Hunters are out there, but like you said, mushroom hunters, wildlife watchers, just people. So this gives us a balance on our public lands.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the hope.
That's kind of the core of why we did that in a sense.
Exactly.
Okay. So also that was for spring season. So for fall season.
Yeah, so sort of the same exact system where we had a survey and a public input process. You'll note that the regulation options that we provide were, again, maintain the current regulation, reduce the bag limit to 2 birds, reduce the bag limit to 1 bird per permit. So in the old system, we had archery permits and shotgun permits, so you could only harvest 1 for each of those. And then kind of the most restrictive, I thought, whenever I was proposing this, was to reduce the season to the month of October and reduce the bag limit to 2. And what we see is that there was probably a little more support for maintaining the current regulations and reducing the bag limits from the survey. However, the public comments were a lot, they tended to be a little more severe as far as limiting the fall season. And in fact, a lot of folks would prefer we just remove the fall season altogether.
Right.
So this was a compromise certainly between sort of maintaining the status quo and listening to the hunters who think that the fall season is problematic.
Right. It's kind of hard to take an all or nothing approach with what we do. So as you said, a lot of this is finding that middle ground, finding that compromise where we can get as much win for everybody.
That's right. So
possible.
Yeah, so it's an opportunity. We retain the opportunity for folks, right? You can still go hunt turkeys in the fall, but then the people who harvest 3 or 4 birds, right? They are supposedly certainly losing a little bit of opportunity. But what we see is that 90% of our archery hunters who actually do fill a turkey tag only ever fill 1.
Okay.
90% of those archery hunters aren't going to see a reduction in opportunity. And then 75% of our firearms hunters who fill a turkey tag only ever fill 1. So we're talking about a relatively small subset of people who are losing opportunity. Now, those are our avid hunters, and I hate to reduce opportunity for anyone, but I think this is a good compromise between the 2 options.
Right. Very good. Good to know. And again, the fall regulations have not been approved yet.
That's
So
right.
folks have time to comment on that through March 2nd. And you can get that through our website at mdc.mo.gov and search public commenting opportunities, fall turkey hunting. And we will see then after we get all of that information in.
Yeah.
So with all of this, Nick, I mean, with these regulations, fall goes into play, what should we expect to see? Give us a little crystal ball here based on your expertise.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think we will see an increase in harvest this spring. I think some of that's going to be the fact that we had some good production in the last year or two. So I think we're going to naturally see an increase in production, or excuse me, in harvest. But I do think some of that's going to be as a function of going to all day. Certainly, if we can get more people in the woods, then there's more opportunity for turkeys to be harvested. But I do think that our season, kind of the way it's structured and the way it's timed in the calendar, should help to insulate us from that. I do hope that we see some stabilization in the R3 metrics.
As you just mentioned, if we can see more people in the woods hunting, that helps with our R3 as far as recruitment, retention, and reactivation.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to achieve too.
Yeah, I don't see this as a silver bullet. If we're being frank,
Sure.
There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of things that kind of lure kids away from the woods nowadays. But it will remove a barrier to participation. If you're a school-aged person, obviously the mornings are challenging, and then if you're a churchgoer, that kind of cuts out your Sunday morning. So your turkey season may only be a couple of days long.
And even yeah, so for kids and that, but even for kind of the working adults.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's easier to maybe bug out early
That's right.
on an afternoon than take a whole day off.
Absolutely.
So that should help folks, the working masses to get out there kind of in the evening.
Absolutely. I do expect to see kind of a small decline in our fall harvest. I think most of that will be driven by a decline in archery harvest.
Sure.
I think historically folks have gotten the turkey permit and it's already in their pocket, and they see some turkeys and they think, well, absolutely, I'd like a fall turkey. So we'll see. That'll be interesting. But one thing that I think will be a real certain outcome of this is that I'll be able to monitor our fall participation a lot more accurately. So right now we may have 12 or 13,000 fall shotgun hunters, right? And that's, I've been able to track that for a long time, but we've got 150,000 archery hunters.
Right.
Certainly I don't expect that there's 150,000 folks out there actively pursuing turkeys. So this will help me kind of track that as far as our participation.
Yeah, by having that dedicated permit.
That's right.
We will be able to know who is out there, as you said.
Yep. But ultimately, and I think this is important to note, regulation changes are something we consider every year, right? I go through the regulation process every year. Now, it's been a long time since any turkey regulations have been changed, so it may seem like they're unchangeable, but I'm going to continue to monitor and assess all the kind of the effects and downstream kind of results of this regulation change, including hunter satisfaction and things like turkey abundance. So it's something that I think we're moving in the right direction with this as far as opportunity goes. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and
all right,
keep track of things.
Okay, good to know. Folks, again, hopefully you could hear us and see us, and we got a late start and we have a lot to cover here. So Nick, real quick, spring production update and the fall season summary.
Yep. So bullet point top line here is that production was pretty good last year. Our 5-year average was right around 1 poult per hen. In 2023, it was 1.4, so that's a pretty nice year. I expect another good year in 2024. Cicada emergences are highly related to very good poult production, so that's something that I think is good news for us.
Okay, let's touch upon that, folks. If you're not aware, we are expected to get, I think, is it the 17 or 13 brood cicada?
Yeah.
Lower half of the state mostly.
I think it's a lot of the state. I think
it's not the, but okay, so most of it. And what that means is this spring, we will be seeing massive amounts of the black red bugs, the cicadas, the periodical cicadas, which is just like popcorn.
That's right.
For turkeys, right?
For turkeys and for
anything. A whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's two kind of not
super buffet
competing theories. It's fairly recent that people have started to make this connection. But it could be that turkey poults have a lot of extra food, so that's obviously good. But it also could be that things like our nest predators, our raccoons, and our possums
are busy eating other stuff.
There's just food everywhere.
Yeah,
so they
they're
don't need
everywhere.
to find those turkey
Yeah.
nests. So
So good. That's
yeah.
good news.
Good
For
news.
spring. And then the fall season summary, we just came off that. So how'd we do?
Yeah, just to wrap it up, we saw about a 12% increase in our harvest during the firearms portion, maybe about an 18% increase in harvest during the archery portion, for about a 15% increase overall. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that we had a good pulp breeding season. So there was just more turkeys out there on the landscape, which is great news. But ultimately, our fall harvest was down, over 80% from that peak in the late
Okay.
80s.
Okay, perspective here.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we get a good perspective, because we have so many people, not somebody, but oh, where have all the turkeys gone? The turkeys were everywhere back in the 90s. And well, we reached a peak. And so to refocus, we had a 15% increase in this fall's harvest over the last 5 years.
That's right.
Which is great.
Yeah.
But yes, it was an 82% decline over a peak harvest of 28,000 birds decades and decades ago.
That's right.
So we can't kind of do an apples to apples comparison today versus then,
No.
but we can over, say, the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's good news.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of participation in the fall turkey season in 1987 was probably, I should know, but it's many times higher than what it is today.
Right.
So that's driving most of that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nick. A
Yeah.
lot of good information. And as we know, with turkeys, so much of it, which you've talked about, production, right? The poults, how many turkeys make it? Also, the harvest. So we've talked about that. But the really big other huge piece is habitat. So Megan will join us now to talk about our Turkey Habitat Initiative. It's relatively new,
Yep.
but in a sense, this is what we do.
Yes.
So what is the Turkey Habitat Initiative?
So it came around about a year ago, but it's been around before that, kind of
Right, informally.
yeah.
That's what we do.
But what we're wanting to do is kind of create this movement statewide to kind of create habitat where it's not existing now, or work on and improve habitat, mostly nesting and brooding habitat for our turkeys. It's severely lacking in most of the state. And where it is available, it's in very, very patchy
Right.
kind of networks. So we're hoping to kind of expand that. And a lot of times, with my job before as a private land conservationist, I would have a landowner that would think they have great turkey habitat. And honestly, I just don't think people know
what good
what it
habitat
looks
is.
like.
Right.
So that's kind of where my job comes in, is to help educate and hopefully kind of make people aware that this is what it should look like based off of what studies have shown. And so we're hoping to kind of get habitat back to that.
Right. And again, folks, we want you to know that when we talk habitat, 97% of land in Missouri is privately owned.
Yeah.
So we really don't have control over that land or that habitat. 93%. Yes, sorry. 93% of land in Missouri is privately owned. We have about 1 million acres that we manage,
Yeah.
which is a couple percent.
We can only do so much.
Right. And on our areas, we're doing a lot.
Right.
It's the key to get into the private landowners. And like you said, when you were doing this, it's all scattered.
It's just scattered.
So little bits of habitat that need to be connected on large scale.
Yes.
And that's
Connectivity.
what we're doing.
And getting people to realize, I understand, because I'm a human. I like to walk through short grass. It's easy
Right.
to get through the woods.
What is
But
good turkey habitat?
Early successional habitat. So we're
What's
looking
that
at
mean?
native warm season grasses, native forbs, anything that's, or anything, if you go in and you mow and then that flourish of vegetation
Stuff that
becomes-
pops up right away.
even though we don't like to look at it, that's what a turkey likes. So getting a landowner to see, you need to get at like the 1/2 foot to 1.5 foot level. And that's what we're looking for turkeys, for nesting and brooding, especially for brooding.
Right. So yeah, we just don't want just grass or we need some cover. We need some
Multi-layered.
shrubby things.
Yes.
We need food for them, a lot of seed production through forbs and things. As you said, nesting. To be
Nesting.
protected.
Yeah, so being hidden on the nest, but then also these 14 days post-hatch is the most crucial for these poults because they can't fly.
Right.
So their only means of getting away from danger is to hide.
Right. In the photo we have on here,
Right.
I mean, that's perspective. Those poults are what, 3 inches high?
Yeah, they're not that high at all.
I mean, they are just tiny. So what we're looking at is literally if you lay on the ground
basically.
and look out.
I get landowners a lot of times when I visit them, if they want to see from the animal's perspective, they want to manage,
Right.
or you need to get to that level.
Right.
So having a landowner for a hint's perspective is probably hands and knees. That's about how high you need to look.
Mhm.
For Pulse, it's ground level. And what that is I like to call that this umbrella cover. So overhead, they're covered, right? So
Right.
they're also protected from the weather. So if we get these
Weather
really
and-
wet springs,
Avian or bird
Right.
predators, right?
any kind of avian bird predators, even mammalian predators. But then if you look at how they are on the ground, it's fairly open underneath. And a lot of our native plants are kind of clump forming. So they'll clump form and there's spaces in between, but then above, it kind of protects them.
So they have a big umbrella,
Right, they
and
have this
within
umbrella.
that, this great little community.
Right. And
to
it's
run around and hide and
multi-layers,
eat.
so they can get
Mhm.
bugs from the ground all the way up to as high as they can jump.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking for.
So again, we want more habitat joined together.
Yes, so timber stand improvement practices are great. Prescribed burning is a huge component of all this. Prescribed burning really helps get rid of dead vegetation or just batchy vegetation, and produces kind of a huge flourish of, native early successional vegetation. that we're
Right,
looking
right.
for.
Right, and so this is a really great time of year to talk about this.
Yes, it is.
Because not just you, but if folks want to reach out to their MDC private land consultants,
Uh-huh.
they can help with this. They can
Mhm.
reach out to you. This is a great time of year to do some prescribed burns.
Yeah, so private land conservationists, we have private land foresters, all of the site visits are always free. We come out, usually they're gonna ask kind of what your habitat goals are.
Mm-hmm.
And we come out, we walk your property with you, kind of listen to what you're wanting, and then we can make a kind of a management plan for you, completely free of charge. And what's also really cool is there are state and federal cost shares that can help a landowner because habitat management's very expensive.
Yes.
So we
Especially
have
large, and we're not talking like a backyard.
right.
Hundreds of acres, if not maybe thousands
I
of
mean,
acres.
I've done site visits to people's backyards also,
Sure,
so we're
sure.
not limited to acres.
Right. Okay.
But
Good
yeah,
to know.
yeah, and what's even better is, let's say you want to do something. I know there's deer co-ops. I'm really trying to push people to do what I would want to call turkey
Turkey
co-op.
co-op, sure, makes sense.
Because turkeys don't just stay on a 20 acre or 40 acre patch.
Right.
I was talking to Nick earlier and a bird moved a mile, so if you can connect and do habitat management at a larger scale, that's even better because then you're connecting various habitats. So what they need in the winter is going to be completely different than what they need for nesting and brood rearing.
Right.
If you can attach that all together and connect it, I think that's great.
I mean, that is great. And like you said, we have a bunch of staff who will come out to your property.
Right.
Walk it with you.
Right.
Put together a plan, which you said is free. The
Free.
work we will do for you is free.
Right.
And then as an added bonus, we can help connect you with state, but mostly federal, what we call cost share, where you can get either money or reimbursement from the federal government for your habitat management.
So federal, state government, both of them will work depending on what practices you want to
Sure.
do. Another really cool thing is throughout the state, and they're becoming more and more common, are patch burn associations.
Yes, prescribed burn
Prescribed burn
associations. We had a big
associations.
effort to bring
Um,
multiple landowners.
Right, because a lot of times landowners are a little afraid to put fire to the ground.
Well, sure, or you don't have all the resources
You don't.
need for your land, but
Right.
collectively as a group, you very well.
And you get
would
all
have.
the help you can get. And
Yes.
what's really cool about them is they get together on a really good burn day. Hey, we'll go burn so-and-so's property first.
Right.
Okay, well, he's connected to so-and-so. Let's go ahead and get this burn done also.
Kind of like a good
So
old fashioned
it's
barn
just-
raising where the
go ahead and
community-
do it.
Yeah, the community comes together and everybody works together
Right.
for someone's benefit, and then you do
Right.
that for each other's benefit.
Yep.
Yeah. That's
So yeah, that's what we're trying to kind of get going here.
great. Okay, so with that, Turkey Habitat Initiative,
Uh-huh.
just contact your local MDC staff and we can help you out in that way.
Yep. They go to that mdc.mo.gov and we have a contact us, and from there
Yes.
they can pick their county and
Right.
it'll have everybody listed there.
And again, they're looking for private land conservationists, community foresters,
Or private land forestry.
or private
Yep.
land foresters. Okay, so with our Turkey Habitat Initiative, we have an educational video series.
So Nick and I right now, we just got, we're in contact with a production company out of St. Louis. So we've got two in the works. We've got educational video series, but then also a landowner workshop.
Okay, great.
So 8 in the 8 workshops throughout the whole state, one for each reason. But what we're also doing is kind of creating a video series that's probably 20-25 minutes in length, and it'll highlight what we're going to go over in our workshops, just in a very condensed form. So that way, if people can't make it to the workshops,
Right.
they can get online and watch the video series.
Right. Very helpful. So we have staff to support you. We have a bunch of tools to support you. We could connect you with monetary support, all of that. And I think as we look at this last slide, I mean, the biggest thing to remember is H, which means help. We are here to help you.
Yeah.
So if anything else, folks, reach out because we are here to help. That's some great information, Megan. Thank you. And Nick, again, thank you for joining us. We're about wrapped up here, folks, so we apologize for the technical difficulties. We will post this. As a last reminder, we want to let you know that, again, you can sign up during February for spring managed turkey hunts. Just go to our website at mdc.mo.gov and search spring managed turkey hunts. You can apply during the month of February. And again, reach out because we're here to help.
Yeah. Thanks for having us today.
Well, thanks for joining us to talk turkey, and folks online who joined us, thank you. Have a great day. Get outside and discover nature.